The night that changed everything. You think you know fear until the night flips your world upside down. One moment, you're patrolling quiet streets, your biggest worry being a routine traffic stop. The next, you're standing alone in a cemetery, staring into the dark, knowing you've walked straight into a trap. I'd been patrolling Jeffersonville, Indiana for over a decade. My routine was second nature, briefing at the station, checking updates on wanted suspects, then rolling out in my cruiser. Most nights were uneventful. But then there were nights like this one, nights that made you question everything. The summer of 2016 brought a wave of robberies in the Clarksville area, all tied to one man, Robert Harrington. Medium build, dark hair, always behind the wheel of a black sedan. He'd been slipping through our fingers for weeks. And then, on that fateful night, I spotted him. It was past midnight. The roads were empty, except for a lone black sedan creeping along East 10th Street. The moment the driver noticed me, he hit the gas. My adrenaline spiked. I flipped on my sirens. He pulled over. I approached cautiously, hand on my holster. When he handed me his ID, I felt my pulse hammer in my ears. Robert Harrington. He was visibly uneasy. His hands trembled on the wheel. I asked him to step out. He refused, muttering that I had the wrong guy. My gut screamed at me. Something wasn't right. I reached for my radio to call for backup. That's when he floored it. I jumped back into my cruiser, chasing him through winding back streets. He led me farther and farther from main roads, straight toward Walnut Ridge Cemetery. Then suddenly, he was gone. His car had vanished, no taillights, no movement, just the suffocating silence of the cemetery looming ahead. Gun drawn, I stepped out. The driver's seat was empty. The door was ajar. The cemetery stretched before me, shrouded in eerie quiet. My flashlight cut through the darkness as I advanced, scanning between headstones. My radio crackled. Backup was still minutes away. Then I saw movement. A figure darted between gravestones. My breath hitched. I called out, but there was no response. Then, behind a monument, 3 more figures appeared, standing still, watching me. And then, from the shadows, Robert Harrington emerged. I was outnumbered. My backup was too far away. One of them barked a command, "Drop your weapon." I didn't hesitate. I raised my hands as they rushed me. They shoved me to the ground, the cold, damp grass pressing against my face. I struggled, but they were too many. My mind raced. This was it. Then distant sirens cut through the night, heavy footsteps, shouting. My backup had arrived. The men scattered, but it was too late. Officers tackled them one by one. Harrington fought, but he was no match. When the dust settled, we uncovered their secret, a stash of stolen goods hidden inside an old mausoleum. The cemetery had been their hiding place all along. I quit the force a few weeks later. That night taught me something. The line between routine and chaos is razor thin. And some nights, you walk straight into the dark, not knowing if you'll come back out. The longest night. They say your gut never lies. I should have listened to mine. I was 17, a junior in high school, when I spent my first night alone. My parents left for a weekend wedding, leaving me in our Bloomington, Minnesota home. I was nervous, but I chalked it up to being alone for the first time. I had no idea real fear was waiting just outside my window. My best friend Melissa agreed to stay over. We spent the evening studying for our history exam, but something felt off. The house felt too quiet, the air too thick. And then Melissa froze. "There's someone in your backyard." Her voice was barely a whisper, but it sent an icy jolt through me. I followed her upstairs, peering out the window. The backyard was empty. The deck chair she swore someone had been sitting in was motionless. We tried to laugh it off, but the unease never left. At midnight, a knock at the front door made my stomach drop. I barely breathed as I crept toward it. No one was supposed to be here. Melissa clutched my arm, her nails digging into my skin. I peered through the peephole. Nothing. No one was there. We didn't sleep that night. And 2 nights later, alone again, I heard it. The unmistakable creak of someone shifting in that same deck chair. I turned off every light as I crept to my bedroom window. My pulse roared in my ears. I slowly parted the curtains. There he was. A man sat in the chair, completely still. The dim porch light cast just enough glow to make out his silhouette. At one point, he turned his head right toward my window. My breath caught in my throat. Then, a knock at the front door nearly made me scream. This time, a voice followed. "Police!" Mrs. Carlson, our elderly neighbor, stood beside an officer. She had seen him from her attic window and called 911. But by the time they arrived, he was gone. The officer searched the yard. No footprints, no trace of him. I never spent another night alone in that house. The motel nightmare. A cheap motel was supposed to be a quick pit stop. It turned into a waking nightmare. I had just wrapped up a brutal business meeting in Cleveland, drained and exhausted. Instead of pushing through the long drive home, I booked a room at a roadside motel. It wasn't great, but it would do. At 1 a.m., a blood-curdling scream shattered the silence. I shot upright. The screams turned into frantic words. "He's attacking my husband. Help!" I bolted to the door, cracking it open to find a woman in a bathrobe, her face streaked with tears. She pointed toward her room. "He's dead. The motel worker. He killed him." Heart hammering, I followed her. Inside, her husband lay motionless on the floor. The police arrived quickly. The woman sobbed as she described the attack, claiming a motel employee had tricked them into opening the door. But when the manager gathered his staff, none of them matched her description of the attacker. Then the police checked the security footage. The woman's entire story unraveled. The footage showed her stalking the parking lot in a mask before returning to her room. No attacker, no mysterious employee, just her. She was arrested on the spot. I checked out immediately, speeding into the night. I never looked back. Some motels are just a place to rest your head. Others, they're a crime scene waiting to happen. If you love spine-chilling stories like these, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. You never know what terrifying tale we'll share next.